everyone, and welcome to this webinar on enhancing the performance of yourself and your teams. We're just a few minutes early, so just take a moment to get a pen and paper and a glass of water if you can, and we'll get started soon. So yeah, just take a moment. We've got 3 minutes until we start. So I'm just going to put us on the slideshow and we'll go from there. Okay, great. Hi everyone, my name is Lee Rourke and today's webinar topic is on leading yourself and your team to greater profits. We're going to get started in maybe just 2 minutes. We've got about a quarter of the people registered on the call at the moment, so we'll just wait for a little bit longer. I usually get somewhere between 30 and 60%, which is pretty good for a webinar showing up on the day, so congratulations to those of you who have showed up. We'll just get started in 1 minute. Hi everyone, and welcome to the webinar on performance for leaders and their teams. There's a whole heap of people coming on right now, so I'll just wait about another 5 minutes, or another minute, sorry, to get started. While we're waiting, could you just get yourself a glass of water, a pen and paper to take some notes? The replay will be available, so if you do miss anything, you can listen to it later. Or if you have to leave early, that's fine as well. You will get the replay. But just, it is better to actually be live. You can ask questions through the chat box on the side. They are private. I've put them private for this webinar based on a feedback from another webinar I had about really keeping I'd love you to just get started by popping into that chat box just a hello, so I can feel the attendees on the line, but also what you'd like to get out of today's webinar. So it is about your personal performance. You might be a solopreneur, you might be an executive, and it is also about performance for leaders and their teams. I'm not separating the topics. To me, they're inseparable. The personal performance of the leader directly affects upon the performance of the team, and some of the team management systems will be created, we'll be talking about, can be changed to individuals and vice versa. The individual systems can be changed to team systems. So we'll talk about all of that through I changed it from a 4-step to a 4-pillar framework today. So we'll get started in just a moment. I'm going to bring myself back on the screen so you can see me if you haven't met me. Hi, my name's Lee. This is my home office. I'm on the beautiful Sunshine Coast here. I get that fortunate position of living in paradise and working from home when I can and seeing clients in their offices sometimes as well. So this webinar today was as a result of it being the biggest concern that the people I was speaking to have, even for individual coaching. Often issues like motivation or procrastination come up as kind of top of people's list, and it's really an issue. They're concerned about their performance, so so that's on a personal level. And then with my team-based people, they're obviously concerned with the performance of their team, because that's going to lead to greater outcomes for their business and a greater feeling of, we want to go to a work where people are actually really engaged and really performing well. And the statistics on engagement globally aren't great. About 47% of people fall into the disengaged from their workplace category. Probably about another 25% are somewhat engaged and 25% fully engaged. So we're not talking fantastic stats on a global level. So this is one of the reasons why we want to look at performance, because it's about that ability to be engaged and focused in the workplace. So let's get back to the slides, and we'll get started with why you're here. If you could just pop into that chat, thanks for saying hi guys, why you're here, what you want to get out of today. Maybe you are an executive and you want to be more personally performing. Maybe you have a team of, give me the number of the team, so I can just really target this presentation to you guys. I recognise some of the attendees' names. We had a really good turnout today, guys. Thanks for coming. But I don't recognise, I get a first name quite often from it, so I'm not sure if they're the ones I know, or I don't recognise everyone's name. So if you can help me with why you're here, let me tell you why, I guess commonly the patterns I see, or commonly the issues that my clients are raising with me around performance. And when I am talking with clients, I'm always looking for the patterns in the organisation, the patterns in the person. But there's a few standout issues that come up time and time again. And I'll just get this slide happening. And the first one is focused. So what this means is sometimes when we are engaged in the workplace, in our own business or in someone else's business, we can't see the forest for the trees. Or maybe we can't see the trees for the forest, and this depends on our individual strengths. So focus is a massive issue, particularly in the digital age. We have so many distractions. People have their own personal Facebook pop up. People have lots of interruptions. Things are moving at a faster pace. We are a more distractible society. So one of the major issues that individuals and teams bring up with me is just that ability to focus on a task and get it done, or the ability to focus on the right area, to have either a big enough focus to not get caught in the detail, or to have a detail focus when it counts, to be able to hone in and chunk down into the small when it counts. And what I find is that we tend to fall in one or two of those categories. One of the profiling tools I use is the DISC profile, and I'll talk a little more about that later. But for me, for instance, I'm an I energy, and us I energies are great at the big picture and sometimes distractible by those shiny object syndromes, and therefore we tend to not be great at focusing on the details. So one of the patterns that comes up for people is focus. So there is one or two people that want to grow the sizes of their team. That's fantastic, because this is going to help you to get clarity on, firstly, what's important for you, and therefore what you can delegate to those team members as it grows. And also, as it grows, how are you going to manage that team and how they're performing becomes a bigger issue. It's not such a one-to-one relationship. And what I find is as businesses grow, that becomes a bit of a challenge for some business owners. So the first pattern category that we're going to talk about is focus. And I say pattern category because there's lots of subcategories of issues around productivity with focus. So that's our first category. The second one is procrastination, or another nuance of this is, for employers are often complaining to me, or team leaders are often complaining to me about the excuses that people will come up with to not get the job done, to not perform, to not take action. It's like, you know, we have a whole file of excuses about why you can't and why it's too hard, or why that can't be achieved. So that's one of the patterns of performance, is that above the line culture isn't there. And what I mean by above the line culture, I mean a culture of taking responsibility for your individual role, but also for the business as a whole. Be that a corporate business or a one-to-one business with just 2 employees, everyone is engaged in making the business a better place, which means sometimes we step outside of our role and take responsibility and step up, or give suggestions to other areas of the business, interact and really step up. And in that above the line culture, we're not making excuses, we're not gossiping, we're not blaming, we're not unproductively bringing up issues. We're bringing up issues with a solution in mind, or with the opportunity to discuss solutions, rather than bringing just problems and complaints. So this is a major bugbear of a lot of people who are business owners, but also on a personal level. Procrastination is a major issue for many of us, and I know anybody who is close to me and is watching this webinar will go, Lee's doing a webinar on productivity, because productivity has been a massive issue for me through my life with procrastination, with that shiny object syndrome I was talking about before. And it's something I've only really begun to master in the last year, but I've collected a whole heap of resources along the way with that. And procrastination was such an issue for me, because I had all that mental talk of all the excuses that would come up when I thought about what I needed to do that was outside of my comfort zone. For instance, some of you might be sales professionals on this call, some might have a sales team, or some may be coaches like I am, or consultants, and they're inevitably in what we're doing, there's sales conversations. And I used to make a whole heap of excuses and procrastinate around the actions that would take me towards having more of those conversations. And so I'm a pretty expert on this little list of excuses. I understand how it shows up on a personal level. It's about managing that within ourselves and recognizing when they are excuses. So that's category number 2, procrastination. And I just want to mention something there, is that procrastination is at its heart not taking responsibility. It's also a very effective strategy for delaying discomfort. So people who are tending to avoid discomfort, avoid responsibility, will tend to procrastinate more than others. And that's a gross generalisation. There are a few other reasons why people might be in a procrastination pattern or an excuse-making pattern. The third pattern that I see time and time again is sabotage. And when I say sabotage, I'm saying that quite broadly. The picture I have here is drama. And so we're talking about that, you know how some people seem to create dramas that then become some of those excuses about why they can't be done, or they engage in gossip or focus in on the politics or the minute drama of the way she said that or he said that, rather than the big picture outcome of what needs to be done. And I find that these patterns happen a lot. These drama patterns happen a lot in workplaces where there isn't clear engagement towards an outcome, and there also isn't a clear environment where that above the line activity is expected. And drama also happens when certain personality types, particularly on the DISC profile, sometimes the S's and the C's, aren't being engaged on a level that works for them. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So sometimes, personally, how this might play out is that sabotage. So you'll do, for instance, procrastination may be an elegant sabotage technique, or you'll just do something that completely derails you at a time when you really need to perform. Or you'll allow, for instance, yourself to get distracted even by Facebook or whatever the latest distraction is for you, right at that point where you know you need to perform. So there's a whole host of reasons why people might sabotage their own success and their own performance, and they're quite personal and individualised, but there are some cultural aspects as well. And in terms of that need for drama is actually a real base level human need, and that can be turned resourcefully or it can be turned unresourcefully. So we talk about the core needs in coaching, and one of those is the need for variety. And so we want to make workplaces meet that need for variety, whether that's for you one-to-one. Are your needs for variety being met in a resourceful way? And if it's in a team place, you know, maybe the team needs to be having more fun, or there needs to be other ways the need for variety can get met during the workplace that is resourceful. I know for me, just personally with my productivity, I find that even one of what I call my self-date, by taking myself out of my business, out of my children's life, I'm a single mum, so it gets intense, is I will do a self-date and I'll take myself to the movies, and I'll do it sometimes in the middle of the day, and I'll whisk off and I'll have myself like a, you know, all the junk food I don't usually eat, and I just sit and I'll watch something really dramatic, and it fulfills that need for drama, that need for variety in my life, as well as giving me that self-care aspect without me needing to go and create drama in my day-to-day business or working life so much, without that need to sabotage. So they're the three kind of main patterns that I see in the workplace. So let's get straight into the outcome for today, which is you guys discovering what the 4 pillars of performance are. So with that, before we really launch into that, I just want to say that first, as always, my business is called Lead on Purpose. A key to productivity, a key to any outcome, is having a compelling purpose. And on an organisational level, that means a vision and a set of goals and ideas that the team are engaged in, believe in, and want to be part of. And on an individual level, that is personally finding your purpose within what you're doing, be that your own business or as an executive, to move forward. So without that compelling purpose, we tend to just be pushing ourselves along from what I call the drive and strive energies, the more survival energies. And what that tends to lead to is a just enough type of attitude in the workplace. So we do just enough to survive, just enough to keep our job, just enough to make just enough money, rather than there being a compelling purpose that drives us forward. So that is always where I start with my clients. Do they have the bigger picture purpose in place? So after that, so that just briefly talks about it there, the purpose, the vision, the goals and the actions, which are all about creating a feeling. Whenever we want to create something in our lives, we're doing it to create a feeling. So I want you guys to just take a moment now with your pen and paper, and I'm going to ask you, if performance was no longer an issue for you personally, we'll do personal and then team if you've got a team. Start with the personal, please. Because if your team's not performing, there's an aspect of you that's not performing as a leader. And as difficult as that might be to hear, it's not about blame or judgment. It's about just realizing that you've got a way to learn in terms of really engaging your team. So with your own performance, and that's cool. That's why I think sometimes as being an executive or a leader is I admire that hero's journey. It's why I'm a leadership coach. It's such a stepping into the unknown, and it's such a path of personal growth. So good on you for showing up. So just in that spirit of that self-acceptance, I just want you to write down that question. If performance was no longer an issue for you, or write down the answer, what would it look like, and how will I feel? So just sometimes we get so focused on what's going wrong. We have to first paint the picture of where we want it to go to be able to create the bridge between what's not working well and where we want to go. So this question's about that for you personally. If productivity was an issue for you personally, if performance wasn't an issue for you personally, then what would you see in your life? What would be different? And what would you feel as a result of that? So let's you can put some of those feelings up for me. It's all private if you'd like, and that would really help me to just target this a little bit more, but get an idea. I just love this to be more of a conversation. Unfortunately, on this platform, I can't open up to everyone speaking like I can on some of the other platforms I do for smaller webinars, but the great part of this platform is you can see my face and you can see my screen, so that's why I use it. So yeah, what feeling are you trying to create? And then as a team, within the same thing, how do you want to feel when you walk into your team? How do you want your team to feel? When they are performing and productive, inevitably they'll feel better within themselves. We don't want to feel like we're doing an average job. So when they are performing and productive, when they believe that they can be performing and productive, what will they feel? What do they want to create as a result of that? And that'll be individual for all of them. And I suggest that when you're working with your team members on a one-to-one with performance management plans, with your KPIs, when you do your performance management reviews, and they should happen much more regularly than once a year, and they should happen with a totally different context, and we'll get to that later if you want to enhance the performance of your team. When you're having those kind of conversations, it's asking them questions. You know, where do you see yourself headed within this business? Are you aligned with the purpose personally? How do you want to feel as you come to work? Great questions to ask to really engage people on having an honest conversation around performance and around productivity. So let's get to those 4 pillars. The first pillar might sound obvious, but you'd be surprised at how often it's forgotten. It's to be outcome and action oriented. So let's talk small business or micro business for a moment. So often when I've worked with life coaching or executives or solopreneurs, is that sometimes when their business or their results aren't going as well as they would like, and I speak to them about where their focus is put as they start their day. So when they're opening up to their day and they're writing their to-do list, how do they know what's the most important thing to do, and how are they focusing on that? And quite often what kicks in here is the avoidance of the discomfort and the avoidance of the things that's going to make the difference to you personally. So when you take this to a team context, what's going to make the difference to you in terms of really mobilizing your team towards productivity is quite often not what I see leaders do. It's not the micromanaging. It's not the dealing with crises. It's more of these tasks we're talking about now, about connecting more deeply with team members and helping them to be more productive and them to perform more often. And often I'll hear leaders say, oh, I haven't had time to do the performance management. I haven't had time to meet with my people. And I'm thinking, what's more important than doing that? So what is the most important actions? What are the tasks, functions, roles that you play that are going to get you towards your outcome? Unless you have clear focus on that every day, every week, every month, every year, then the days and the weeks and the months and the years just disappear and you end up in the same position you were last year, financially, team size-wise. So get total clarity on your outcome and what is the most important things to focus on to achieve that outcome, and put that at the top of your to-do list. And when I write to-do lists, they're 3 steps long. And I will give you a system for how to do a total 1 page day plan productivity template a little bit later. But it is that clarity of focus and on the action. It's quite that simple. It's that we get distracted by other people's agendas and the minutiae or the dramas or the challenges that come up that we need to micromanage because the system's not in place, for instance, when a more important job would be to go, okay, well, this is not my role. So obviously the system isn't clear, so how are we going to create that system as a team? So and this is what happens when you are outcome and action orientated, when the whole team is engaged in that, be that yourself or a whole team. So with the whole team being engaged in action and outcome and orientation, one of the ways I facilitate that is by having time aside where the team takes time out to look at what are the key actions and the key outcomes that you want to achieve as a team in terms of results. And so it's not set by the leader at all. It's actually set by the team. And the leader has obvious input in that discussion, but the team goes, okay, this is what we're doing. We want to get to this level. We feel that's doable. What will it take for us to get there? So you have a total buy-in from a team level in terms of setting the outcomes. I also see we do workshops with that around culture, so creating a cultural outcome they want and what are the action steps that come from that, and that workshop has to be done as a team. There's no point the leader coming in and say, the culture we have here is this, this and this, like it or lump it. There's no engagement in the culture if people don't feel like they've been asked in the first place about what type of culture they want to create when they come to work. So creating that outcome is really, really important. So I'd love to see some of your feedback as we're going through. Questions. I'm sure some of you must have questions as I'm talking through this, and it is really, really important that I have those questions so I can target it. So please, please, please be vocal. So outcome and action orientated is pillar number 1. It sounds so obvious, but it's so often lost in the busyness and the disorientation of the chaos that can occur when you have 2,000 emails and 10 team members bringing all their crises and knocking on your door every day. And I understand all that, so it's about creating systems so that you are allowed to take back the space that you need as a leader to do those actions and set the vision and hold the vision of where you want to achieve. So leadership to me is essentially about holding the vision. And whether that is you as a solopreneur or as an individual executive or as a team of, as a CEO of thousands or a leader of a small team, it doesn't matter. Your job is to hold the vision for the direction. And the others around you will respond to you holding that vision. But if you lose that vision, then that gets lost as well, and the action steps don't happen from that place. So that's pillar 1. Pillar number 2 is awareness, and this is self-awareness. So when I talked about my own productivity and I talked about my procrastination pattern and I talked about the DISC profile, what I was demonstrating there is I know my strengths and I know my challenges. I know what areas of productivity come easily to me and I know what areas don't come easily. And I think we all have some level of awareness, but the more awareness we can bring into the room when it comes to our performance, and the more that leaders can assist the team to create that awareness through creating a non-judgmental forum where we can just discuss. So the team leader might say, you know, if someone had been managing me and my short attention span and my tendency not to follow up and follow through, they might say, oh, Lee, I noticed that you're really great at the big picture outcomes and really creating rapport with your clients. However, I've also noticed that sometimes it means the details get lost in the whole picture. Overall, I think you're doing a great job, but I'm just wondering how I can support you to put in place some systems to support you with the aspects you find more challenging. Or it's more of a discussion. It's like, what do you know you're good at? What do you know you're not so good at? Okay, let's workshop this together about how we can increase your performance. And if it's just your own personal performance we're talking about here, it's bringing that awareness into your day-to-day practice. Looking back at the end of a day and going, did I achieve my primary outcomes that I wrote down? Am I focusing on what's most important? Where did I lose track? Not so that we can bash ourselves up, and I have a total feedback system for doing this as well, but that's another webinar's worth. But where do I tend to lose it in terms of my performance? It might be a time of day, it might be that a certain person tends to emotionally derail you, and then you tend to lose the process. So how are you going to manage your relationship with that person might be the aspect you need to focus on. So bringing this self-awareness in, and I love using the DISC profile for this because it's just a lovely behavioural profile, so there's no excuses. It's not like this is my personality and that's who I am and that's it. It's a behavioural profile that shows you what comes naturally, energetically, easily for you, and the aspects that are more challenging within the context of your work role. And so that brings this aspect of awareness into that, and it starts a conversation, and that conversation might be with yourself or a conversation between a manager and yourself about what you can do differently. I can't tell you how many people underestimate awareness in this picture, because there's so many myths about productivity, cultural myths about productivity. Even if I work faster or if I work harder, if I work longer hours, then I'll be more productive. I know unequivocally that is not true, because I used to work as an occupational rehabilitation consultant in a company, and I had billable hours, much like a lawyer or an accountant does. But with our billable hours, we can only bill set amounts for different insurers, so it's probably not as lucrative as being a lawyer if you're looking at a business. So as a result of that, my productivity was pretty accurately shown in my billable hours. One day, about 3 of my colleagues left really quite suddenly. It wasn't a great workplace to live. It didn't have a fantastic culture, and I learnt a lot about culture from how bad it was. And literally my boss dumped a pile of cases on my desk, and I had a 50% greater workload. So I decided I was going to work about another hour to an hour and a half a day just to get through it. And what happened was I had an initial spike in productivity, so my billable hours per day went up from 5.5 to 6 and something, and then it started to drop, and it dropped down below 6, and then it dropped down below 5.5, and then it dropped below 5, down towards 4, and I hadn't reduced my hours. I was working very busily, very hard, but I wasn't being productive. My focus got dropped off, my energy dropped off, my engagement and my love for what I was doing dropped off, and my ability to focus on the outcome dropped off. So this awareness of yourself and what really affects your productivity, from self-care up, from self-care to relationships with other people, from self-care to relationships to who you are and what your strengths and challenges are, to systems that will support you. This awareness is the key to productivity. There is no work harder, faster, just put your head down and bum up approach here. It's actually better to have more rest, and then when you are going for it, to totally go for it. And I do what I call hours of power, where I will just go for an hour flat chat, and I'm focused on what I will achieve in that hour, and I find that's a really effective way for me to manage my productivity. So it's different for different people, different in different industries, I'm aware of that, but being aware of yourself is a major pillar here. Being aware of your team members is a massive pillar as well. So if you know, for instance, that you're managing somebody like me who's not great at detail, who has a high need for variety with that shiny object syndrome, and therefore needs to be stimulated, then that is something that you would build into my work role. So you would build that opportunity to do different tasks into my work role if you wanted to keep me productive. You might also make sure that you connect to me on a human level. I'm an I energy, so we are about people. We're about people. So if a boss came in to me and just said, here's your work, and didn't even ask me how my weekend was, rapport's gone, and my willingness to really connect to them and therefore connect to my performance is decreased straight away. So knowing how to work with different personality types is really key as a leader for their performance. So that's pillar 2. I just wanted to add into this some procrastination patterns, because I know I talked about procrastination being one of those 3 key patterns here, but I just wanted to show you how complicated it can be in terms of what can show up with people with procrastination. And people will know themselves sometimes when you ask them, and sometimes they won't, but I just wanted to run through them. So that first one is what we talked about right at the start, that below the line thinking, a lack of responsibility taken for themselves and their outcomes in their lives, that big long list of excuses. The second is a lack of belief in self. So quite often when people are procrastinating, when I really probe a little bit harder, they really don't believe in their ability to get a good outcome. So therefore, the unconscious kind of strange way of dealing with that is to avoid doing the task in the first place, and then I won't do it badly. Or if I don't believe in myself, I feel total nervousness when I come to doing that task, and then that becomes a delay pattern or an avoidance pattern. So again, the next 2 are about avoidance as well. It's that unresourceful reaction to fear of success, or an unresourceful reaction to a fear of failure. I don't buy much into people's fears. I think fears are fears, we all have them. It's just what you do with your fears, and whether they immobilize you or whether you go, yeah, I've got that fear, I'm going to do it anyway. So it's that type of reaction that I'll see. There's that sabotage to create stress. So for instance, me being that core need for variety, sometimes procrastination or delay tactics give you that rush of finishing it right before the deadline. Sounds strange, but this is what the unconscious mind, which is running most of our behaviour, will do. The next one is lack of purpose. So why you are there? Why are they there? If there is no purpose to it, it's kind of, well, what's the outcome? Hence, what do I need to do this for? The next one being that survival or just enough mentality. It's like almost some personalities are patterned to just go to that point and then just stop. The next one is the lack of alignment with the purpose of the work or the organisation, and I talked a bit about that as well. But if there isn't an alignment in values, if there isn't an alignment in the outcome, then that can be a challenge. And I've seen this directly with a sales professional that was selling something they didn't ethically believe in, and it started to affect their performance, and with procrastination about making the calls. Avoidance of pain and discomfort, I talked briefly about that as well. And poor motivation strategies. So this is just about teaching people how to be motivated. So often we'll think about the discomfort rather than a great motivation strategy is to think about how good we're going to feel when we have it done. And the last one I've got there is the ducks in a row pattern. This is when people don't take action till they feel like they've got all the ducks in a row. So they feel like they have all the information they need. They feel like they have thought about it long and hard enough. They feel like they've talked to all the people they need to talk to. They feel like they need to feel an expert before they'll take action. So a lot of procrastination happens with that. And if you're familiar with the DISC profile, I find that happens quite a bit sometimes with the C energy or the CS energy. So that's more the compliant or the high detail people, and that becomes a bit of a perfectionist pattern that stops people from moving forward. So I just wanted to bring those into the room for some of you who might be dealing with procrastination or have a team member that you know is really procrastinating. So you can start to have some awareness around why this might be, and just start to educate them or educate yourself about what's going on. Because with that awareness, if I know I have, for instance, the ducks in a row pattern, I can notice my procrastinating, and I can say, it doesn't need to be all lined up before the duck starts moving. So, and so this is the an analogy that one of my mentors, Joe Parno, uses, is that he says, well, the ducks aren't in a row until the mother duck moves. The mother duck moves, and then the ducks get in a row. So with action, so that if that's an issue for you, you can say, just start. If I just start, then I'll find out the issues as I go along. And so when you have that self-awareness, which is pillar number 2, then you can start to use that self-awareness to coach yourself out of these patterns. So pillar 3, we'll move on to that. is connection. So performance is, we don't perform in a vacuum. We don't perform on our own. We perform through connecting to our purpose, through connecting to others that we're engaged in being in a team with, be that our clients or our team members or our mentors or our coaches or our even above us, our leaders above us. So feeling really connected is really a pillar of performance, and being connected. And often that is ignored in performance. So when I first started on the coaching journey, I would ask myself, am I connected to my business? And then I would ask myself, who can I serve and who can I connect to? And then I would ask myself, am I connected to my own self and my needs? And I would ask questions like that to assist my own performance and productivity, because it was largely about connection. And in connecting as leaders, it's about being able to communicate in those ways that connects people in to you personally and connects people in to the mission and the purpose of what you're trying to achieve. And that is a process of learning from your mistakes. I often find that that if anything, in relationships and teams, there is under-communication. And the more connection, direct connection, not connecting to the person who's gossiping about something else, but the more direct, respectful conversations that happen, the greater performance of the team, even to the point where the more conflict that occurs, because there is discussion happening, the greater the performance of the team. I call that healthy dissent. It's when things are really happening because people are putting in their ideas and they're engaged and they're going, I don't agree that the most important idea for us is to focus on marketing, or I don't agree that it's about sales, it's about this, this and this, and then we start to discuss ideas. So connection is hugely important to performance. So I've just link that a little bit further. So connection to purpose, connection to others, to own core needs. So in my training, I usually cover the 6 core needs because it's so essential to why we're here. So if you are performing well, I can guarantee that you're getting some of your needs met through your working role. And those 6 core needs, the first 4 are the needs of the person, the personality, and the last 2 are the needs of the spirit. So people are really zinging in their work and business life when they're getting their need for certainty, control, and comfort, whichever nuance of that's more important to you, but that they're not sticking just there. So some people who are showing up just for the money, they're showing up just to get need number 1 met, and then the rest is less important to them. But they will not be happy unless there's about 4 of these needs getting met, depending on what are their primary drivers. So the second one, variety, I've talked about that with me. Shiny object syndrome needs to be changed and uncertain for there to be interest there. If I was doing a repetitive job, some people might find comfort in that, but I find no comfort in that at all. I find it deeply disruptive to my performance. Number 3 is significance or respect. So significance is feeling good, and this is where employers of teams can't overdo this positive feedback, I don't believe, in terms of if it's meaningful. Not if it's just lavished willy-nilly, but if it's meaningful. It's like, meet that need for significance, make them realise how important their role is, and no matter what role we're talking about. So the other day I was on the phone, and it's just, since I became aware of this concept, I try and meet people's needs for significance everywhere I go, and it makes people feel great. So the other day I was on the phone to I'm looking at changing schools, and I was on the phone to an enrolment officer for my daughters, and I was asking her lots of questions about the school and about the enrolment process, and she was amazing. She was absolutely the most supportive, patient, flexible, nothing's too difficult kind of person. took heaps of time to answer all my anxieties as a mother. And at the end of that call, so she made me feel respected and met my need for significance as a mother, that it is actually important to me, so it's valid. And then at the end of the call, I just validated her. I said, thank you so much. You've been the most easy person to speak to. You've really helped me deal with some of the concerns and worries I've had. You know, it's really made a difference to me. And she just went, oh, thank you. And I could tell no one had said that to her for a while. I could just tell in her reaction. And I know that might have given her the energy to just keep moving forward, or made her realise how important her role is. It's not just about managing a wait list. So number 4 is partly connected to that. It's that love and connection. Do the people you're working with in the team feel loved and connected? So when I'm saying this, I'm talking about it from a team perspective, but this is also about us meeting our core needs. As a person that works as a consultant, it can be a little bit lonely in business. So I've had to work out how I'm going to meet my own needs in these areas. So that means that an aspect of my performance is at the end of every day to just go, what did you do well? And celebrate some successes that I've achieved at the end of the day, because that gives me that sense of significance. It gives me that feeling of doing something worthwhile, which means number 6, which is contribution. And I've also had to work out how I'm going to get my need for love and connection met when I don't have a huge, massive team. I've got a personal assistant and I've got some subcontractors, but I don't have a massive team. So with that in mind, how am I going to get that need met? And then number 5 is growth, and I find this is key. When a lot of people will start to sabotage and stagnate with their performance when they don't have number 5 met. So when the growth isn't there, then we have issues. So quite often just putting somebody on a training or taking yourself on a training to reinvigorate why you are doing what you're doing in the first place, or getting a coach or a mentor so that you are growing and learning as you go. Just when you're starting to lose that passion for what you're doing, it's a great one to focus on. And then number 6 is contribution. Like I said, no matter what role you're in, you're making an important contribution, celebrating that for yourself and helping others to celebrate that within what they're doing. You know, particularly for those who think they're just doing this. Well, why is that important? And helping them to connect to how important that is really makes a difference to how good they feel about coming to work. So meeting those core needs for yourself is the first task in connecting. And then looking at helping others to meet those core needs is where you really start to work amazingly within teams, or make the others around you feel good. You know, take this to your personal relationship. I love this model. You take it everywhere. It applies universally across all of your life. If you meet your partner's needs for variety, need for certainty, need for feeling respected, need for feeling loved, they aren't going anywhere. If you can coach them on how they can meet their own needs for those, they're really not going anywhere, because they're not going to sabotage what good stuff you guys have created together. So this applies universally across the board, and I love this model. I could talk about it all day. But connecting to your core needs and making sure they're met, connecting others to their core needs so they can learn how to meet themselves. And this is the process I did a opt-in. Some of you might have done before. By opt-in, I mean it's a product I give for free so people can become part of my tribe and part of my community. And as an aspect of that, I talked about a checklist for autonomy. And so sometimes at the start, when we're working with our team members or working with ourselves, we need that validation to happen externally. We need someone else to meet our needs, but we become more autonomous when we start to meet those needs for ourselves. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't interact with other people in getting those needs met. It might mean that we seek that friend who we know helps us to feel significant and respected or loved as well. But that is still us meeting those needs, but also to be able to meet them on our own in that moment when no one's there for you, which inevitably happens in life. So meeting your own core needs allows you to take full responsibility for your outcomes, allows you to become autonomously working and autonomously self-sufficient from the perspective of being able to drive your own bus, being able to set a goal and achieve it, and find the resources you need within yourself or outside of yourself to achieve that. So connection is the third pillar. Pillar number 4 is, in some ways, to me, surprisingly the most exciting, because productivity is, we've talked about lots of patterns and it might seem quite complex, but productivity is quite simple. It can be put like anything else into a system, and there are systems of productivity that will ensure that you stay pretty much on track as long as you keep using the system, just like any other system. So there's a few core systems that I work with my clients, and I get quite excited about this because I think that my systems of productivity in the workplace are game-changing, and that the KPI once a year performance review system needs to change and shift. And if it doesn't, then you're going to have increasing amounts of disengaged people in the workplace, because the stick of you need to perform to that standard does not engage people. It's the bare minimum. And I do believe that, as I said with number 1, have a focus on outcome. Set expectations, absolutely, but you can't set expectations once a year and say that's it for performance for my team, because expectations don't even scratch the surface, as you would have found out through this webinar, about what true performance is and about what true productivity is. So here's some systems that I use personally, and I assist my clients to use personally and for their team. So the systems I work on are focusing and prioritize systems. So the 2 that I've written down there, the first one I've written, and I will send you the links to both of these systems. You won't have to opt in again. I'll send you a web page where you can just download them, is the 10 for me process, which is a 10-minute meditation. It's a focused meditation in that it's not about just feeling good at the end of it. It's about coming up with those outcomes, those 3 most important things I need to do today. Now, that when you do this, because you are in a more relaxed state at the end of it, that most important will come from that deeper intuitive wisdom as well as the logical wisdom. So you'll get results, things like, sometimes when I do this, it'll be connect to my youngest daughter. It will be go for a walk on the beach. Or it might be get that done that you've been putting off. So this 10 for me is a 10-minute meditation that at the end of it you end up with a 3-step to-do list. And it's a 4-part meditation that helps you to open up and receive, and also to get real clarity and calmness and be back in your body rather than in your head. The next system that I work with is a purposeful day plan, and everyone can use this. I'll show you a picture of it in my next slide. And it is a day plan, I'll go through it in a minute, which replaces the traditional to-do list, takes as little time and is far more effective. The next system of productivity I work with my clients is a personal productivity plan. So this is tailored to the workplace, and it covers the KPIs, the outcomes, but it also covers the other aspects of personal productivity, core needs, what they require to focus. And it's a working document that is accessible to the leader and also to the team member. And so you can create one of these if you're just on your own for yourself. So you can take this process if you're not a client and think, okay, well, what do I really need to increase my productivity? What's going to help me focus? What's going to help me? What core needs do I need to get met, and how can I introduce that into my working day? What self-care issues do I need to address to make sure my energy is optimal? And how I'm going to continue to focus on the most important and on my outcomes. And so with this personal productivity plan, it's not a performance plan, it's a personal productivity plan the person takes ownership of and executes on themselves, by themselves, and is reviewed with the leader being a coach and a support for them around their productivity and their performance. And then finally, the last one there being communication systems. So because we aren't performing or productive in a bubble, there are systems around communicating with that you can create. So, for instance, when I introduce concepts to workplaces about above the line culture, then quite often the team will set up a communication system whereby they can respectfully bring up when they feel that that a member of the team has brought a suggestion to a meeting, for instance, that is below the line. They might just have a communication system that says, okay, to keep it above the line, what outcome are we looking for with that suggestion? So you have a system that's agreed upon by the team which enables everybody to stay above the line, which is going to increase performance and productivity of the team. There's a whole host of other systems will, of course, increase performance and productivity. Quite often when leaders are bringing me issues around performance of the team, it's quite simple. It's simply that they need a system for it. The system needs to be written down, documented, and therefore then the team leader can take responsibility for ensuring the system is adhered to, and if the employee isn't adhering to the system, it's a simple performance issue then, rather than a personal issue, or rather than an issue of this person just isn't doing it the way I want to do it. Well, is it in a system in the first place? So their systems of productivity are so important. That's the fourth pillar. What are the structures that support you in your day-to-day performance, that help you to get the most out of yourself? And what are the structures, if you have a team, that help your team get the most out of what they're looking to achieve? So I can't emphasize how important this is enough. I'll just show you quickly my purposeful day plan. I'll send you the link to download this. There's an instruction sheet that comes with it, but this plan is something I invented for myself to help me focus. So at the end for my 10 for me, and you don't have to do the 10 for me to do this plan, I come up with the 3 most important. For some of my clients, they will fill that first box on the left-hand side, that bigger box, with maybe 10 or 12 things. And then what I get them to do is to highlight the 3 most important. The little bit I haven't discussed first is up the top is receive and feel. This is about linking into our natural motivators and linking into the aspect for when I work a lot with leaders who are used to just managing things themselves, and control is a bit of an issue. So we talk about what do I want to receive today? I want to receive a sense of feeling like I've accomplished something, or I want to receive some support in terms of this, or this. And then we look at what do you want to feel. So I want to feel clarity today. I want to feel focused today. It'll be different every day when you ask yourself that question. I want to feel motivated. I want to feel positive. I want to feel engaged. I want to feel excited. Whatever it is, it'll be different on the day. And when we put that on a plan, we're actually prompting our unconscious mind to start to look for those experiences of feeling that way. And we're also tying why. This is basically becomes our why. The reason why I'm doing the most important is to feel that clarity. So then we write down our list of most important, like I've already discussed. We highlight the top 3. Over here I've got follow up and connect, because I find it useful for me to separate out my tasks from people I might need to connect to, and that some of my clients alter these topics at the top, but most of my clients agree with me that that is useful for them, particularly when they are a leader and they might forget that they really need to connect to that team member. This is a real reminder that the job is about connecting, that a pillar of your performance or your team's performance is about connecting. So who do you need to follow up and connect to today? And then at the bottom I have space for 2 projects. So often with our day-to-day, we have our day-to-day tasks, and then we have a project. So the project might be around your leadership. It might be about it might be about hiring some people, or it might be about improving the culture of above the line. And what are the 5 steps that are going to help you to achieve that? Now, they're not to be done today necessarily. Maybe you'll get through one of them, or maybe you'll do some preliminary work to facilitate the first step of the project. Some people have literally just, they will just kind of transfer these project aspects across to the following day. and just cross one off as they go. So it separates out those projects, those things that you're working on as a leader, and helps you to keep them at the top of your mind. So you're not getting just caught up in the day-to-day drama or the minutiae or the craziness that happens in any workplace. You're looking at what are your key projects that you're working on, and you've got a clear visual idea of how to meet those. So this was an adaptation of other people's one-day productivity plans, but the key things there are really to focus on those 1, 2, 3 most important. And then if you get them done, for sure, write another 3. But if you've got the 3 most important things done in your day, every day, you'd probably be performing better than 90% of the population, because I often talk to people and their days have just disappeared. So looking at what is your most important, who you can follow up with. So I will send you the link to this and you can download that on. And this is about focus. It's about seeing what is the most important, seeing the forest for the trees and the trees for the forest. So I wanted to complete this talk speaking a little bit about culture, because a performance culture is exactly that. It requires quite often a change to the global culture within the organisation. And the way I encourage leaders to begin to create cultures. So create cultures are, we create our reality. We take responsibility. We create the work environment. We're engaged in creating that. So this is just a little model that I came up with, and I thought I'd share that with you because I think it's quite relevant to performance and to productivity. And the first aspect there is congruence, so that leaders walk their talk, and that's really important what I find about congruence is that we almost have a hidden congruence radar, and it's getting sharper. You know, we're exposed to so many marketing messages, so many sales messages, so many people who talk the talk but don't walk the walk, so many people who've let us down because they've not delivered on their promises, that we tend to have this radar for people who aren't congruent. And it's almost an energetic thing. I don't know, it just didn't feel convincing to me. It just didn't feel right. It's what people will say. So when you are a leader, and I don't care if you're a solopreneur and you've got clients and a tribe, a community, regardless of your position, you've chosen to be a leader if you're on this webinar, really, because it's only leaders that are really concerned with the performance. So leaders, if you've chosen to be a leader, then it's your role to walk your talk. And if you can't walk your talk, to be vulnerable around that, and then that's walking your talk as well. It's to demonstrate what you want to achieve. So that doesn't, that crosses all types of examples. I remember once my boss, when I worked for for a different organisation, it was a global company, and the CEO came to visit the Brisbane office one day, which was a really big deal. And we happened to have to move around some desks because the company had grown. And he literally just mucked in and picked up a filing cabinet. And I thought, wow, you know. So there was an aspect there of congruence in the way he did that. Congruence might demonstrate itself in other ways. So if you are talking about an above-the-line culture, then you need to definitely walk the talk of that. So how that might present is that you don't gossip or criticise your competitors, that you keep things above the line. You can definitely do a comparative discussion about the competitors and talk about what they do or don't do well. But if we're going to create an above-the-line culture, then the leaders need to really be that. And that takes effort, and sometimes that's a lonely journey when you can't just lower yourself to the position of the person that has a gossip around the water cooler. You're separate as a leader, and I've written a blog post, if you want to jump on my LinkedIn, all about how to manage the loneliness of being a leader, and it's got a lot of really good feedback if that's an issue for you. The second one there is respect and acceptance of other energy types. So performance happens when everybody in the team respects that we're different and respects that, oh yeah, Lee's a bit shiny object in a big picture, and how do we manage that, and how do we communicate with that, and how do I make sure my needs get met when she is that way? So it's an acceptance that other people are different and respect for that, and just an attitude of respect within the workplace. The expectation of above-the-line culture I've also talked extensively about. It's just that is expected. And that alignment with vision and values happens. It happens through the organisation in terms of the culture. That there's trust. So quite often what happens is that there's a lack of trust shown in the way the leader communicates to the people, particularly if they tend to micromanage. And what that does is decrease the confidence of the person that they're managing, and therefore you're decreasing performance. So trust is really, really essential here. And then the last one is exchange of ideas and value. So when information is openly shared, and regardless of their positions, employees are enabled to contribute ideas and value to the business. So I call this intrapreneurialism. It's the aspect of when people are engaged, they act like entrepreneurs within businesses that aren't their own. It's proactively thinking about how to make the place better. And with this becomes that healthy dissent, that healthy conflict that I was talking about, when you have cultures that are focusing on an outcome, that are looking towards performance, that are connecting, that are engaged. So it's actually a great thing. And quite often with the DISC profiles, what I find is particularly the S profile leaders. So the S is the mother archetype, the stabilizer. That they get uncomfortable around dissent or around conflict, and then therefore there's an avoidance of it, and that can really stifle those ideas generation, next level performance. And that's how your team really grows, is when someone comes up with an amazing idea. So with Create Cultures, that's just a model around how important culture is towards performance. And if you're not responsible for creating the culture, then create your own culture within the culture. Create your own bubble within the space. And you can do that with your teammates. You don't have to be the leader. You can lead up. You can lead to the side. You can say to your team, how do we make this fun? Or you can say to the team, let's focus on an outcome. And you can begin to be the change agent that creates this shift in culture. So I just wanted to put up my quote about leadership, because leadership is the ability to engage, mobilise and inspire others in a common purpose. It does not require a position or employees. It's a mindset of responsibility, connection and initiative. And if that's not performance, I don't know what is. To be highly performing, in a way we've made a choice to be a leader, or we've become a leader accidentally through our dedication to excellence or our dedication to the outcome. And it's really taking that responsibility. So it's my mission to create whole workplaces of leaders. So I'm writing a book, which some of you might know, on a topic called Forthright Leadership, and it's about people really stepping up into their power and becoming the leader that they were born to be. And this webinar is forming part of that book, in that one of the reasons I'm running these webinars is that they'll be transcribed, and then I don't have to write quite so much and I can cut and paste bits of it. So help me with this process if you would like by joining my next webinar. I'll run them once a month, which will give me some time. Your next steps today are, like every other webinar I'll ever do, or every coaching session I'll ever do, will be to talk about your action plan. So with that lovely piece of paper there, I want you to think about, just take a moment now, about what you have learned, what your major takeaways from today are, and if you can pop them into the to the chat box if you like, and what your, let's go for 3, action steps are. What are your 3 action steps? So maybe it's a really small one. Maybe it's just to download that productivity plan when I send it out in the next day or so. Maybe it's to start to use that. Totally useless if you don't use it. Maybe it's to connect to somebody you know you're avoiding a conversation around. Maybe it's to really look at the pattern behind your procrastination and what you could do differently. So write down your action plan and schedule in the first step. There's goals, and then there's action plans, and then there's scheduling it in and taking the action. So make a commitment. I'm going to do that by tomorrow or next week or whatever it is. Put a time to it. You can book a 15-minute clarity session if you haven't already connected to me and you would like to just have a chat about whether my coaching or training is useful for you or your team. It's just a complimentary strategy session, and I guarantee you'll get 1 or 2 takeaways from that you can implement. It's a no obligation chat. So if you want to do that, I have popped up on the right hand side. I think you'll probably see there's a link you can click, and just in case I've put it on the slide as well, so you can book in for that. And yeah, so that's the link to book that one. And so just to finish up, I'd love to hear your questions. Any questions about the 4 pillars? Any questions about how to deal with specific issues? I'd love to answer those. Somebody has asked, am I suggesting the team run the culture meeting? I'm suggesting the leader runs it with the team, and the team does most of the talking, and the leader bites the tongue around some of these issues. I actually run a lot of them for organisations because sometimes that third party is better received by the team. They feel less that there's a right or a wrong answer as they're talking through the issues, and that depends on the relationship you've already got with the team and how confident you feel in your ability to run the culture meeting. And with the culture one, I love that one to be off-site if possible. I think it's a great add-on to a team building type exercise. I'm not a massive fan of let's just go, whitewater rafting together and suddenly we'll work as a team. But if you're going to do something that is a getaway, then you can add on those type of activities which are fun and light, and then really spend a few hours nutting out what you want to achieve with the culture. So yeah, so I think that's really yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Somebody else has asked if I could get a copy of the last webinar. Could you? I suspect I know who you are, but could you put your name, full name and email into the private box? They're all private, the chat, so I can email you that link there. A few people have left and said thank you. So are there any other questions? I don't have many questions today. Quite a few thanks, and I have to go. Look forward to the links. Excellent presentation. So I'm going to stay. Love those action steps. Peter has put up some action steps. Go over the webinar, read notes carefully, redevelop the monthly business development meeting. Love it. Because it's the action that counts. I don't know how many personal development seminars get sold where nothing happens at the end of it, because it's that key of taking action and the key of focusing on the outcome. It's what D energies naturally do well. which is the dominant energy or the bull energy, naturally make decisions and focus on the outcome really well. Sometimes not as good at the listening and the awareness aspect, depending on how behaviourally flexible they are, and maybe slowing down and being patient with other people who aren't as action orientated at times as required or aren't great at the detail. And they're valuable members of our team to have that diversity in our team of the different energy types. We've just all got different challenges to manage. So, okay, yeah, absolutely. So I'd love to have hear questions, have feedback. You can connect to me via email personally on lee@leerourke.com, and any of my emails that go out globally as a list, when you email back you get me personally. I don't have an assistant manage my emails for that reason. I want people to connect to me personally and I want to be available. I'm also very active on Facebook and LinkedIn, and you can find me there as well. And I'd love to support you and your team if you want to connect. And just love to hear feedback too. So if you love something about the webinar or didn't love something or want another webinar topic, put in your request. That would be great. Someone has written that they love the CREATE acronym and the self-date for variety and drama. Yeah, self-date fills many needs for me. Variety and drama and connecting to myself, and it takes away any of the resentment that could accumulate as a single mum who works in a service industry. And this is, if you have service professionals, then this is one of the aspects that you need to be aware of, is that tendency to burn out and the tendency to put others first, which is much more that S energy, the mothered archetype. And when you do that at detriment to self, and you do that at detriment to productivity. So sometimes we need to coach those S energies or those self-sacrifices that are in our team, or if you're one of those, on how to make sure they look after themselves. And I find that if I do my self-date, I don't feel resentment towards my kids when they demand of me, or I don't feel like, you know, I'm giving and getting nothing in return. Which I've felt that at different aspects during my career. I think like any career, there's moments where we're really engaged with it and really connected to it, and there's moments where we can lose that when the stress builds up, or we start to get overwhelmed with the aspects of the position or the role that we don't enjoy. And so to manage that, part of that is those connection practices we talked about, and part of that is connecting to self, nurturing self, doing things that make your heart sing. For me, I just go and stand. Love living here. I live a few hundred meters from the beach, and I go stand in the ocean and I just let the water rush over my feet. So I do see clients in Brisbane. I do head down there if you're in Brisbane, and I will fly anywhere for training. So if you want to connect to me, if you're outside of the zone. So yeah, so thank you for connecting, everyone. I haven't had any comments for a while, but I'll stay here for another minute or two in case there's any late questions that come through. I'm going to stop the broadcast, but you can still send the connections in, the questions in.